An Israeli airstrike kills 5 people, including the mayor, in the southern Lebanese town of Nabatea. Egypt announces sending another shipment of aid to southern Lebanon. And the Palestinian death toll exceeds 42,400 fatalities, with more than 99,000 individuals sustaining injuries. It's exactly 4 p.m. Caen local time, and you're watching Q News. Let's start out to our bulletin with the latest developments in Lebanon.
كل المستهدفين هن مدنيين.
وضع شيء مرعب، شيء بخوف.
An Israeli strike has struck Beirut's southern suburb for the first time in 5 days. The Israeli Forces Arabic spokesperson said that the Air Force was targeting a building in the area of Dahiyya. It's the first strike near the capital since 2 attacks killed 22 people in a densely populated neighborhood on October the 10th. Lebanese security sources have reported that the mayor of Nabatea, Ahmed Kahil, was also killed in the Israeli airstrike on a municipal building in Nabatea. According to the report, Mayor Ahmed Kahil was killed among a number of municipal council members who were inside the targeted building at the time of the raids. On the other side, the Israeli military said it struck dozens of Hezbollah targets in Nabatea and dismantled underground infrastructure. At least 5 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike on a municipal building in the southern Lebanese town of Nabatea. The Israeli airstrike came hours after the United States said it opposed the scope of Israeli attacks in Lebanon's capital amid a rising death toll and fears of regional escalation. Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Naguib Mikati has condemned the latest Israeli aggressions targeting Lebanese civilians in the city of Nabatea. Mikati said that the attack deliberately struck a municipal council meeting which focused on addressing the city's relief and service needs. Mikati added that the latest Israeli aggression, along with the ongoing crimes committed by Israel against civilians, is a direct challenge to the international community, whose silence only emboldens the occupation to continue its violation and crimes. The Egyptian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Badr Abdelati, has announced that an Egyptian aid plane has headed to Beirut airport to complete the airlift to support Lebanon in light of the ongoing recent Israeli aggression against it. Abdelati added that during a joint press conference with his Spanish counterpart, that Egypt condemns any targeting of UNIFIL forces in southern Lebanon and calls for the implementation of UN Resolution 1701 and condemned and the condemnation of the Israeli operations in Lebanon, which resulted in the displacement of more than 1.2 million Lebanese. A fourth relief plane, part of the Saudi Humanitarian Air Brigade operated by the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center, has arrived at Beirut's Rafiq Hariri International Airport. The Saudi press agency has reported that the plane carries essential aid, including food, shelter, supplies, and medical assistance. This relief effort comes in response to the directives of Saudi King Salman bin Abdulaziz Al Saud and Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, underscoring the kingdom's commitment to supporting Lebanon during its time of need. As the conflict in Lebanon intensifies, mass displacement leaves families in overcrowded shelters, struggling for essentials like food and clean water amid a deepening humanitarian crisis.
As the ongoing conflict in Lebanon triggers a wave of massive displacement, humanitarian organizations are reporting alarming conditions, with many families now living in overcrowded shelters and lacking access to necessities like food and clean water. As violence escalates, thousands of civilians are fleeing their homes, seeking safety amidst a deepening humanitarian crisis. Recent Israeli airstrikes have targeted areas in northern Lebanon, raising concerns about the safety of United Nations peacekeepers operating in the region. Additionally, the U.S. State Department has raised its concerns with Israel regarding its offensive in Beirut. U.S. officials are calling for restraint, highlighting the importance of minimizing civilian casualties and ensuring humanitarian access. The international community continues to urgently call for a ceasefire and a sustainable resolution to the violence. As the situation continues to deteriorate, the global recognition of the need for humanitarian relief is more pressing than ever, with many calling for the rights of civilians to be upheld and for aid to reach those in desperate need. The world watches closely, hoping for a resolution that prioritizes peace and stability in the region and alleviates the suffering of those caught in the crossfire. The continued escalation of violence poses a significant threat to regional stability, while the international community remains vigilant in seeking solutions that protect the most vulnerable.
And for more analysis, we now move to Salma in our newsroom.
Thank you, Rana. For more insights on the situation in Lebanon and Gaza, we're joined by Salim Awais, UNICEF's regional spokesperson for the Middle East and North Africa. Mr. Salim, welcome to Q News. We're glad to have you with us to know your inputs on the matter. So, in light of the continuous Israeli airstrikes targeting infrastructure in Lebanon and the orders by the Israeli occupation forces to the Lebanese people to evacuate their homes, can you give us a deeper insight into how things are on the ground in Lebanon?
Well, as you said, it's being intensified, and as we heard in your reports, thousands, but over 1,200,000 people have been displaced from their homes during the last month. Most of them, 1 million of them, only during the past few weeks. Among those are 400,000 children now either in schools sheltering or on the streets. And this is just a part of the overall catastrophe for the children and their families in Lebanon. We're talking about over 127 children killed since the beginning of the escalation in last October, and almost 900 children injured in the past months. So the situation is really dire, and the lack of essential necessities is becoming more and more a problem to the children and their parents and their families, as the aid is struggling to go to them, while all of us, the international humanitarian community, is trying, and the national, of course, are trying to get the aid to those people. But with the intensifying bombardment and attacks, it's really hard for children to keep afloat and their families.
Now, speaking of children, what are the main challenges that UNICEF is facing in Lebanon?
Well, first of all, is we are losing too many children to this conflict, and that's one of the main concerns, of course, children's lives, but also the movement of children, lack of the essentials. We talk about water, about food, about shelter, about blankets and mattresses, and now we are getting into the winter season in Lebanon. So all the necessities are becoming more and more lacking. Also, the infrastructure is being hit, and that strains it and strains the help and support that it can get to the children and their families. We're talking about especially the water infrastructure, the sanitation infrastructure, and the health system. All of those alarm us that we might be seeing disease spreading. We might be seeing more and more preventable causes of suffering spreading inside Lebanon.
Now, sir, how has developments in neighboring countries influenced the humanitarian situation in Lebanon, particularly regarding refugee populations and resource distribution?
So the whole of the situation in Lebanon is really getting all the agencies, the humanitarian agencies, the humanitarian community together to respond. But of course, that needs to be scaled up to meet the needs. That means that the international community needs to step up their aid and their support for the work that we do on the ground. What we need is more of financial support, but also more of support to the civilians and the systems in Lebanon to be able to respond to what's happening.
Now, looking ahead, what are your projections for the humanitarian situation in Lebanon in the upcoming weeks?
Well, if things continue as is now, if bombardment and attacks continue, that means that more children will be at risk of protection issues such as harassment, such as labor, different issues. Their health and their well-being is at stake. Of course, we're talking now that, according to the government, over 1,200,000 children in Lebanon are not getting the education that they need. 60% of the schools are occupied by displaced people. All of this means that children, if this continues, children will face more loss to their education, to their well-being, to their health, and of course to their mental health, which the more this violence continues, the more footprint that trauma will leave with them for the rest of their lives, unfortunately.
That was Salim Awais, UNICEF Regional Spokesperson for the Middle East and North Africa. Thank you so much for joining us. Now we're going to move back to Rana for more news and developments around the world. Back to you, Rana.
Thank you very much, Salma. And we move on with the news bulletin, where the death toll in Lebanon from the ongoing Israeli attacks has risen to 2,350 since October last year, with 10,906 others injured. The Israeli occupation forces said Israeli troops continue to advance its offensive in southern Lebanon. Early on Wednesday morning, about 50 rockets were fired from Lebanon into the Safad region of Israel, with no reports of casualties. The U.S. State Department has raised concerns with Israel over its bombing campaign in Beirut in recent weeks. The State Department said that the strikes have diminished in recent days and that Washington would continue to watch events very carefully. State Department spokesperson Matthew Miller said that while there are strikes that the United States would consider appropriate for Israel to carry out, the U.S. made clear to Israel that it had concerns with the nature of bombing campaigns since in the past few weeks, largely due to the civilian death toll.
Across Beirut over the past few weeks, and we made those concerns publicly. I'm not going to speak to it in any detail from here, but we have had quite detailed conversations with the government.
Can you elaborate on that nature? Is it the number of high civilian deaths?
We have made clear that we are opposed to the campaign, the way we've seen it conducted over the past few weeks. Now, they do have a right to go after legitimate terrorist targets. We see Hezbollah continue to operate across Lebanon, and Israel does have a right to defend itself against those terrorists who pose a threat to the state of Israel. But we've had real concerns about the nature of the campaign that we saw roll out across Beirut over the past few weeks, and we made those concerns publicly. I'm not going to speak to it in any detail from here, but we have had quite detailed conversations with the government.
U.S. Deputy Pentagon Press Secretary has said additional U.S. personnel and battery components for missile defense system will continue to arrive in Israel. The Secretary added that a team of American troops arrived on Monday to operate a terminal high-altitude area defense battery to defend against ballistic missile attacks from Iran. This is not the first time the United States has deployed a Tahd battery to the region. Earlier this year, Tahad was deployed to the Middle East, with another deployed in 2019 for training in integrated air defense exercises.
And that's why, over the weekend, Secretary Austin authorized the deployment of a terminal high-altitude area defense, or THAAD battery, and associated U.S. military.
Iranian Foreign Minister has met with Jordanian counterpart Ayman Safadi in Amman. This comes as part of his regional tour to discuss the ongoing and escalating situation of Israeli war on Gaza, which has now expanded to Lebanon. Over the past week, he also visited Syria, Iraq, and Saudi Arabia. He is expected to later visit Egypt and Turkey as part of Iran's diplomatic reach out to countries of the region to end genocide and atrocities. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has announced a visit to Lebanon later this week. Speaking in the lower house of parliament, Meloni said she expected to be in Lebanon on Friday. Meloni also said heeding Israel's unilateral demand for UN peacekeepers to be withdrawn from the country would be a grave mistake.
Sulla base di una richiesta unilaterale di Israele sarebbe un grave errore, minerebbe la credibilità della missione.
The United Nations has renewed its call for a ceasefire between Israeli occupation forces and Hezbollah group. UN spokesperson said a ceasefire is the only way to ensure the safety and security of peacekeepers, as well as to protect the population of Lebanon and Israel from further suffering. It follows recent attacks on UNIFIL peacekeepers in southern Lebanon since Israel began a ground attack against the Hezbollah group.
In southern Lebanon, where the Israeli Defense Forces have conducted ground operations since October 1st. In recent days, we have underscored our alarm about
The UN Children's Agency has said more than 400,000 children in Lebanon have been displaced in the past 3 weeks, warning of a lost generation in the small country grappling with multiple crises now gripped by the ravages of war. However, displaced children in Lebanon have found a place to regain some sense of normality during the conflict. Drawing classes, indoor and outdoor games are among the scenes seen in a shelter center in Lebanon's Shuf area. An Israeli strike hit a building in Gaza City, sheltering a displaced family, killing 13 family members. 7 of those killed were removed and 6 others are still buried under the rubble, as people could be seen digging through the debris by hand to get them out. Five Palestinians have been killed and others have been injured in an Israeli airstrikes in al-Nasr to the west of Gaza City. Local Palestinian media have reported that the airstrikes bombed a house near the Italian Tower in al-Nasr, which killed 5 citizens and injured others. Local health authorities confirmed that the Palestinian death toll from the Israeli onslaught since October the 7th has exceeded 42,400 fatalities, with more than 99,000 individuals sustaining injuries. Israeli occupation forces have committed 6 massacres against families in the Gaza Strip over the last 24 hours, resulting in the killing of at least 65 Palestinians and the injury of 140 others. Commissioner General of the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees has stated that the UNRWA is very near to a breaking point in Gaza Strip due to the unprecedented destruction.
Hide the fact that we might reach a point that we won't be able anymore to operate. And if we cannot operate anymore in Gaza, it's not just UNRWA as the main provider of services, but you have also the rest of the UN system, which very much rely and depends on the platform that the agency has offered so far. So we are very near to a possible breaking point. When will it be? I don't know, but we are very near of that.
That brings us to the end of our news bulletin. Here's what we have been covering. An Israeli airstrike kills 5 people, including the mayor, in the southern Lebanese town of Nabatea. Egypt announces sending another shipment of aid to southern Lebanon to support Lebanon. And the Palestinian death toll exceeds 42,400 fatalities, with more than 99,000 individuals sustaining injuries. This concludes our news bulletin for this hour. Don't forget to follow Q News on YouTube, Facebook, X, Instagram, and TikTok at QNewsEG to stay informed. For real-time updates, connect with us on the UMS digital platform. Watch it. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more coming up here on Q News.